Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Monday, April 26th, 2021. We're in the last week of April here, and we're going to get started with our pre-market analysis. So we're going to jump, now that we have our weekly candle officially closed, we can now look at that weekly and have some confidence in the signal that we got there on the close. And first, just want to jump up to our highest time frame, which is our quarterly or 3-month, and still have the same picture that we've had for over a month now or two. We've got no signs of reversal, and it looks extremely bullish from a quarterly perspective. When we jump down to our monthly, same exact story, no signs of exhaustion, very bullish. And I think that's really all that there is to say. Now, remember, we did this little bit, kind of just an observation of the slope and price over time here. And you can see that over the last 12 years, this year we've had pretty much the most extreme push in price. The slope is at the greatest that it's ever really been, at least in the last 12 years that I have loaded. So very extreme buy bullish push off of the lows that we made from the COVID sell-off. And so things are just looking extremely bullish here. Now, when we go to our weekly, this is where things are starting to get a little bit interesting. You can see that the bar that closed for April 16th, we had really no signs of exhaustion. We were pushing higher, and now you can see that the bar that closed for last week, we basically have, it kind of flattened out here. I think it broke it by just 3 points there, but pretty much flattened out here, and the indicator pushed way higher. So we're starting to get a little bit of a discrepancy here, and so this is your, what you can consider almost like an exotic divergence forming here from our previous weekly close. And so we're going to have to kind of monitor this and see what happens here with this new weekly candle. But currently the new weekly candle is again pretty much flat here. And we've now come down just a little bit. But we have all week for this candle to develop. So there's really nothing too concrete to really be said about that. But we do have the previous candle that closed. And you can see that price essentially stayed at the same level, but the indicator pushed up pretty significantly there. So we have a little bit of some bearish divergence on this weekly. Now remember, if we see this on every time frame, we could then maybe expect some type of a pullback here. And because we are in this uptrend, these pullbacks are really just, again, some exhaustion in the bull push that could lead to, again, could be anywhere from 20 to 200 points, but we'll need to build up the case on the shorter time frames. So currently on the super high time frames, there's no indication of exhaustion or reversal until we get to that weekly. And the weekly is starting to show a little bit of a potential for some exhaustion in this move up. Now here really clearly on the daily, you can see that we've pushed just a little bit higher, not by much, but the indicator has pushed lower here. So, and this on the weekly, you can kind of see it stayed about flat and it pushed higher. Here we stayed, you can even argue about the same, flat, but we pushed a little bit lower. And so in this instance, we've got a little bit of exhaustion here off of Friday's candle. And so because we have weekly and daily showing the signs of some exhaustion, it would not be surprising if we had somewhat of a pullback here before we want to continue higher. Now remember, we called 4,200, 4180 and 4,200. We've gotten to 4183, so right in that 4180 area, and then it pushed to 86 on Friday, and so right in this area. The next area that makes sense is 4200 and 4250 up above. So we could potentially get a small pullback and then a bounce. But again, we want to go down to our shorter time frames to really build up a clear case here for the morning. So when we check out the 4-hour here, what you can see is from a 4-hour perspective, our RVI stayed about the same here, right? In fact, it's exact right there at 66.25 on RVI. But then the price has pushed up pretty significantly. And so now we're starting to see a slight potential on the weekly, a pretty clear on the daily, and then a pretty clear on the 4-hour of some exhaustion in this push up. And remember, this push has been just a relentless push pretty much since the lows of March. So we had the low at the beginning of March. It pushed. We pulled back to March 25th, where again, I just want to notify everyone we did call a very strong bull bias on the morning of March 25th. And then from then, we've just pushed and pushed and pushed. And so now we're just getting our first indication on these kind of higher time frames of a little bit of exhaustion. And when you get those indications, what you'll typically see, again, are these pullbacks of maybe 100 or 200 points. And sometimes they get a little bit more exaggerated, sometimes with news and things like that. So some potential signs of exhaustion from the 4-hour, the daily, and the weekly. And then on the 60-minute, we don't quite see it anymore. So what we're looking at here is our high time frames are telling us of some exhaustion in this push up. But as we get to our intermediate time frames, the story changes a little bit. So we did get the pullback. So we got 86 to, let's just say 86 to 66. So just about 20, a little over 20 point pullback from where we got the indication near the close on Friday. And so this could be potentially all the pullback is, but we will have to kind of see here on our intermediate time frames what things are saying. So right now, no real signs of exhaustion there from the all-time high at 86.75. And currently, there's really, from a divergence perspective, there's really nothing right now that we can kind of eke out of the price right now. Now, what I am noticing here is we are holding very high here, and if I measure this leg, we're holding even much higher than the 38. So we're up around a 25% retracement, and they cannot get through that area. So despite the higher time frame exhaustion, the bulls at this moment are still defending, and it looks like we could get a push higher. But from the 60-minute perspective, there's really nothing too concrete giving us a picture right now. Everything looks kind of typical for what it should look like. And so we'll have to go to our intermediate time frames here to start to get some type of bias coming into the open. So let's take a look at our 30-minute here. Okay, and the 30-minute did kind of show that exhaustion here as we pushed to a higher high. We got the lower high on RVI. So we got a little bit of a confirmation of the high time frames there. But again, remember, we got that pretty swift sell-off from the all-time high. And sometimes that's really all you get, despite some of the higher time frame exhaustion indications. But right now, as we push higher here from the overnight low, there's no indication of exhaustion on our intermediate time frames. So right now, it looks like we could potentially at least come up to test the overnight high, if not push a little bit higher here, because I don't see anything telling me that we're kind of done with this current move. Now, what I am noticing is we did get some bullishness, not off the overnight low, but off of the next push down, where you can see that we have RVI coming down just a little bit lower, but price is pretty obvious there, has pushed a little bit higher from the lows. And so we've got somewhat of a bullish indication here on the 30-minute. And again, no real indication of exhaustion up here where price currently is around 73, 73.75. The 10-minute is also giving us that bullishness off of these lows. So our overnight low came down. Again, the low was 63.75. So that 64 that we were watching last week ended up being relevant here at the beginning of this week, which again, a lot of the levels that we're working with here in this room, they end up holding through and working into the future. And that's why I keep a number of them on there. And again, I will go ahead and edit these if new things kind of in price action tell me to. But again, this 64 ended up pretty much being the overnight low, and now we're up 10 points from there. But what I'm seeing is a bullish indication off that overnight low, just like we saw on the 30-minute. So the 30-minute confirmed it around 4:30 Pacific time, but we got the signal on the 10-minute about an hour earlier. And so we've got some bullish indications. We again don't really have too much of a sign of exhaustion here from a 10-minute perspective. And so our 30-minute and our 10-minute are giving us bullish signals off of the overnight low. Let's see if the 3-minute has anything else for us to see here. And again, you can see from the overnight low, just like the 10-minute, we've got a push lower, but then the indicator was about the same, but it's actually just a little bit higher. And so from this low here, I'll go ahead and mark it, we've got that bullish indication, and now we're kind of chopping around, or we're pushing through a lot of the chop that we had in the overnight and Globex session from Sunday. So really, the overnight high here, which let me get the number on this. So 41.76 is really going to be where we need to break through here. So let me go ahead and mark that. And then our overnight low is essentially that 63.75 here. And so because we have these bullish indications off of 63.75, that's going to be an important level to watch here in the open. So if they cannot hold this up and push above 76, then on this pullback here, they better defend 64 or 63.75, or else we're going to have some issues here with the bullish case in the open. And so just to kind of recap everything and put it all together here, our super high time frames do not have indications of reversal, but then our high time frames, the weekly and the daily and the 4-hour, are showing a bit of exhaustion. Now the idea is there's exhaustion, but then look what ended up happening. We had this extreme sell-off, and so this could be all of the exhaustion that we get. We get this pullback from 86 down to about 64. So about a 22-point pullback. And that could be all that we get out of that exhaustion pattern on those higher time frames. So when we jump down to our intermediate time frames, and something that I kind of missed here on the 60-minute is you can argue that from that previous major swing low down here, we pushed way up, and the indicator is actually down here. So we do have a little bit of that 60-minute, and then again 30-minute and 10-minute all giving us bullishness off of the overnight low, and we're breaking through the overnight high right now. So that level I just drew at 76, they just blew right through it. And so this bullish case coming into the open could end up holding here to come test the all-time high or previous daily high at 86.75 here. So coming into the open, we have a bit of a bullish bias, assuming that they can hold 64 here. And if price does pull back a little bit, we do have some key levels here to watch, and we'll have to kind of see how far this specific leg goes, because I don't want to measure out some retracement levels when this specific leg has not finished. So Again, there's no real clear signs of reversal or exhaustion when I look at my like my 10-minute or even maybe my 3-minute here. And so we'll have to kind of watch as we get a few minutes to the open. We can then see which direction we want to go ahead and take our first trade.